When I was sharing with Pastor Barry, when we were preparing for this message, I let him know how grateful that we are to be connected with all of y'all. This is a healthy church. This is family. I'm in the living room with my family right now. We've moved a few times in our walk with the Lord over the past 14 and a half years, and we've never felt a reception like we have here. We've never felt a level of comfort like we have here. Not a comfort that keeps you from growing, but a comfort of family. So really, I want to encourage you. This is like, I could have done a press release and done a lot of marketing to fill this room and have like all kinds of people here for this book launch. But this is family. Like, this is a soft launch with family. And we're going to unpack some stuff this morning, and I know it's a safe place to do that. So what we're going to talk about, we're going to use a couple words that you don't usually hear from the pulpit: sex, porn, things like that. But it's okay. This is a safe place to do that. We need to address these topics from the pulpit because the church is the answer. So I'm going to go over an outline with you. I prepared notes so we can identify the enemy, we can share a true story, and we're going to have a strategy for solutions. Because I'm not just going to get a microphone in my hand just so I can get control or talk for 40 minutes or whatever, 30 minutes. Like, we're going to have a meeting today that we're going to leave here equipped, encouraged, educated, and empowered to really make a difference. So be encouraged, even if things are making you uncomfortable. I'm a little disclaimer, it's going to be raw, it's going to be real. I really want you, because we're looking through the lens of the Lord. Okay, this is Sunday morning, y'all. We're in a safe place. We're in church together. So we're going to look at this through the lens of God, through his eyes. And I really want you to pay attention to your heart while we're speaking, okay? During this time, I want you to really pay attention to your heart. There's going to be stirrings in your heart. You're going to have emotional experiences in certain parts of this message. It's going to be pricking your heart. There's going to be, let's say the word even triggers. Pay attention to that. That is the Holy Spirit. He is going to download to you how you are part of the solution. You are the solution to ending trafficking. There are some tissues up here. I might use all of those, so hopefully there's some more somewhere else in the room. But just pay attention to your heart, and I'll check in on you from time to time. So I'm going to prepare you now that there will be an opportunity for ministry. And raise your hand if you're one of our prayer partners scattered throughout the room. I know we've got a handful of them here today. So I want y'all to be ready, because at the end of the message, there might be people who really need prayer. Pastor Barry so graciously called me up a few weeks ago. Some of you were here. And the Lord had already prepared a quick word in my heart that day. There were 3 things that we need to pray for the people of God: for healing in their hearts, or healing for physical manifestation of diseases to leave, for freedom from sin patterns, from sin committed against us, sin patterns that we feel trapped in, and for activation. So at the end of the service, we'll pray for those things for you if you feel those stirrings in your heart. So we're going to talk about human trafficking. Are y'all excited? I do this for a living, okay? I speak at churches. I speak at I'm speaking tomorrow for a Chamber of Commerce. In a couple weeks, I'm traveling to train emergency room staff and doctors how to recognize trafficking. They want a special teaching on how porn and trafficking are connected, because the doctors and the staff want to understand that so that they can really use those tools that they're going to be equipped with to make a difference in people's lives. And they're people of influence. We want to equip them. So we're going to talk about human trafficking, buying another person, placing a value on a human life. It's really unthinkable, isn't it? Hard to put those words in my mouth, that we buy people, we traffic a human. It's hard to really wrap your brain around that, isn't it? So we'll do the old journalist trick. We'll go who, what, where, when, why, how, those kind of questions. so you understand what human trafficking is. And I do want to take a little bit of an aside right here. I want to tell you what human trafficking isn't first. Bless their hearts, it's not upper middle class, usually white women, walking through Whole Foods, getting followed by a guy, and then a van parked in the parking lot. That's actually destructive to our message because that's so far from the truth of what human trafficking really looks like. It takes the focus and the spotlight off of what trafficking really is, and it puts them on these women who might have the best intentions, and maybe they really did have a scary situation, but they can't go out on social media and say, this is trafficking. They were trying to traffic me. So let's talk about who gets trafficked. It's not the strong, empowered woman walking through Whole Foods. It's the weak, vulnerable vessel. Traffickers are business people, and they look for an easy dollar. So they're going to look for a single mom. They're going to look for a young kid. You know, I heard a pimp. That's what we call traffickers. It's a 4-letter word that I can use from the pulpit for trafficker. I heard one say in an interview that we can build homes to rescue these girls every day, but another 14-year-old is born every day. So he looks for girls with daddy issues. So do you think that, if we stopped here and just started praying, let's just pray for the fatherlessness in our nation to end. Let's just pray for the purity, sanctity of relationship to be restored, that a husband and wife would produce a child, not a moment of passion, not a moment of confusion, not a moment of pressure of two people just coming together because they could, but because they had an intention and they made a promise to each other that they would create together and reproduce in like kind, like God called us to. So fatherlessness and vulnerabilities like being a single parent, those are some real vulnerabilities. Poverty, alcohol and drug addiction, those create vulnerabilities. So start thinking in your head. We live in Trophy Club, y'all. We're pretty safe here, right? It's pretty cushy. We're kind of removed from even the Metroplex. But I could take you to some places not far from here where you see abject poverty. I could take you to some places not far from here where there are literally people sleeping under bridges. That's their house. That's where they live. They're very vulnerable. They're very vulnerable to be trafficked. And I like to say it's widows and orphans. These are the modern day widows and orphans. Single moms, fatherless kids. Anybody ever read in the Bible about widows and orphans? Anybody in the room ever read about, our one job? Our one job, our one calling from the Lord is to serve widows and orphans in their time of need, right? Guess what, y'all? You're all hired today. You get to go to work Monday morning. Don't wait. You could start this afternoon. One job, care for widows and orphans in their time of need. So we talked about who? Oh, wait, I forgot this statistic. Do y'all like statistics? Not a really churchy thing to share statistics. But the University of Texas, anybody in the room go to University of Texas? I don't want to start a war or anything, but I know there's Aggies in the room too. So University of Texas released a study. They say 78,000 children, minors under 18 in the state of Texas are being sold for sex. Those aren't kids coming across the border, being trafficked in from Guatemala or from Mexico or Honduras. We're talking about U.S. citizens under 18. How big is 78,000? Is that a lot? Does that surprise you? I think it's a lot. It bothers me. We don't have real numbers. Pray for Tommy. She's helping to gather the information to compile the real numbers, but it's really underreported because the vulnerable people being manipulated don't often report. So I have scriptures, but I forgot to give them to get the message prepared. But we'll go to James 1:27. as we end our little chat about who. So in James 1:27, and I'm reading from New King James, it says, "Pure and undefiled religion before God and the Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their trouble, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world." So there's your job. So the what is when somebody's exploited for another's financial gain. And I have a breakout that I do, training on this, called the buying and selling of bodies and souls. So we're not going to unpack that today, but you can read Revelation 18 if you want to see a little bit into that and what that looks like, the buying and selling of bodies and souls, and what happens to a system that allows that. So where? Has anybody heard a real case of trafficking happening close to here? Like 3 weeks ago, did you see it on the news? It was like 5.5 miles from this very place I'm standing in North Fort Worth, Keller. One guy, one trafficker, had over 100 women scattered throughout the Metroplex in 3 different main locations. So where does trafficking happen is within the limits of culture, the limits that culture allows, and where there's no protection. So we're in a safe place this morning, right? We're in a safe place. We're in a place of protection. But not everybody knows this protection. Not everybody knows a family of the church. Not everybody knows the shadow of his wing. Not everybody knows that. And so when you're outside of a place of protection, that vulnerability might be exploited by a trafficker. So the hows, I don't want to get too far into this because we're not going to give any credit or glory to the enemy. But there's a list of ways that they do this: manipulation, mind control. How many people in the room are under 18? Okay. And y'all are here with your parents, so you're safe, right? But do you have access to the internet? Like cell phones, tablets, iPads, iPods, stuff like that? That's the number one way that people are trafficked in our country. Trafficking looks different here than it does in India or in Asia, I guess Asia is India. Not here for a geography lesson, y'all. Don't take notes on geography from me or math. But I can tell you that it looks a lot different here. So let me give you a little example of what it might look like to somebody that's under 18 that's in our room today, or one of their friends. Texting online, somebody says, "Hey, have you met my friend?" They introduce this person to their friend through a conversation online, and a relationship gets built. We don't know limits of relationships anymore. There's no boundaries anymore. We were talking about that last night. My friend Ryan Smithy, we were talking about this last night. There's no boundaries on relationships. And so 15-year-old, 16-year-old kid thinks that they can trust this person because they were introduced by a friend. We don't know if that's another 15-year-old. We don't know if that's a legitimate person that we can trust. But a kid doesn't know that. So we have to have these real conversations with our kids about vulnerabilities. And we give them a device that just lets people come right into their lives. Total access right into their lives. So I'm going to give you an encouragement, okay? How are your hearts? Y'all doing okay? We haven't really talked about anything gross or scary yet, right? So go to my website, and I've got cards and bookmarks and stuff at the desk or at the table. So even if you don't buy a book, come get my card. We've got conversation starters, ways to talk to your teenagers or teenagers that you love and are connected to talk to them, to start preparing them to help protect them against this stuff happening to them. So it's super easy to start these conversations once you have the tools. We even have tools for little kids. Raise your hand if you're under 10. Yeah, there's at least one. I knew that there was at least one. my little buddy over there. So I have a tool for kids her age even. So it's not scary, it's not weird, but it's just a conversation starter. So the why of trafficking, it's the root of all evil. Go to 1 Timothy 6:10. 1 Timothy 6:10. The why. Money, 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 money. Sex trafficking is not about sex, y'all. Porn is not about sex. If porn was about sex, why would they give free samples of it away to get people addicted to it? So you got 1 Timothy 6:10. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, for which some have strayed from the faith in their greediness and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. And on to 11, but you, O man of God, flee these things and pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, gentleness. That's what y'all are called to. So we're cutting off the root. And when I talk about trafficking, I can't do it without talking about the demand. We can equip our kids. We can minister to the widows and orphans. We can help vulnerable people limit their vulnerabilities, help them get jobs, help them get stable housing. But that doesn't eliminate the demand. The demand is the issue. The demand is the issue. If nobody was buying, nobody would be selling. If nobody was buying, nobody would be sold. So anybody take economics? I told you not to take math lessons from me, but I know about the economic triangle. Supply, demand, product, right? So in trafficking, when you're talking about human trafficking, the supply and demand are the buying and selling, and the product is a person. So if you just remove the demand, there wouldn't be anybody sold. So I think the issue is humanity. Like, you remove the humanity of another person, and then you can do whatever you want to them. Then you can treat them like a slave. Then you can force them to do things that they would never normally do, because you don't see them as a human created in the image of God anymore. But I'm going to go even another layer. And I've been doing this work for a while, and the Lord had to take me to this place. The buyer, he doesn't want to do this. He doesn't want to rip somebody's humanity away. He's broken too. He loses his humanity too. Like, I'm not bashing men, although I will use a statistic. 99% of sex buyers are men. 99%. Anybody here have a son? I do. He's almost 30 years old. My stepson is almost 30. I have a grandson who's almost 13. He's the quarterback of his football team this year. So my job with him is to raise him so he would never, like, even fathom buying another person, renting a body. Like, that would be such a foreign thought. Can you imagine if we just raised up a generation of sons who would never do that? This would end, y'all. Like, we can end this. We can change this. We can stop human trafficking. We can do it. We have the ability. We have the power to do it. We're going to cut off the demand. We're going to raise sons that honor women. And if you've watched what's happening this week in D.C., it's injustice on both sides, y'all. Injustice on both sides, but I'm glad we're starting a conversation. So let's raise up these sons, because we can build houses for the survivors. We can go talk to the governor about more resources. They can take money out of all of our pockets, tax us so we have more resources to pour into the lives of the survivors. But doesn't it make more sense, instead of putting a Band-Aid on the problem, just to find the ultimate healing, right? In the demand. How's your hearts? You guys okay? Anybody getting that prickle I warned you about? That stirring? It's good. Don't ask for it to go away. Now we're going to go somewhere where it's really going to get stirred up, okay? Like, we're going to get really vulnerable. We're going to talk about a survivor story. You want to hear a true story? This is that creativity that Pastor Barry was saying. It connects your heart to the movement. The Lord told me this morning, today is a day hearts are going to be baptized into the justice movement. Y'all are abolitionists. I know that you're out there. You've been waiting for permission. Today's your day. Today's your day. So let's talk about a survivor. A victim at first, and then a survivor. So a young girl, 6 years old, her dad commits suicide. Mentally ill, unstable, on drugs, alcoholic, broken family. Now she's an orphan. Her mother, vulnerability as well. Now a widow with 2 small children at that time. She's trapped in poverty, abject poverty, hopelessness. Hopelessness is a symptom of the kingdom of evil. Like, we have the solution for that, right? We have the answer to hopelessness. His name is Jesus. Jesus. He's the ultimate answer to hopelessness. We can apply him to those situations. But that widow didn't hear that from the church. She didn't hear that. And this is not an accusatory message in any way. Like, y'all take the prickles in your heart and go forward with this. This is no condemnation. But in that day and age, she didn't hear it from the church. Instead, she heard from a predator that said, I'll give you a better life. I'll take you to a place where you can have things that aren't available to you here. A nice car, nice clothes, money, new house. And he did that for her. He took that single mom and her 2 daughters, brought them to a spacious place, a big place with lots of money, and started exploiting vulnerabilities. And the abuse for this child started in that time. And it built through a ring of upper-class pedophiles. And then it went at 12 years old into her being a runaway. So when she was a runaway, that's what sex trafficking looked like as a child, was the pedophile ring. But then the runaway triggers more vulnerabilities. And there's something called survival sex that we talk about in this education movement that we have with trafficking. And that's the trading of anything of value for a sex act. You guys, I know it's hard to hear that word from the pulpit, but Pastor Barry just spent 6 weeks talking about desire. Like, this is the perfect end to that message. Really. So he's been saying it. It's just not been in this context, and I know it's hard to hear. And we're talking about a child, and I know it's hard. But there's so much hope in this story. Because after that vulnerability and victimization, it triggered a downward spiral to go through cycles of bad relationships, boyfriends that weren't really boyfriends, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, remember in the past, broken family, fatherless, mother's a widow, predator. Like, do you hear all these vulnerabilities like stacking up, right? So this girl in her teenage years thought she was damaged goods. Her boyfriends were trading her for drugs or whatever they could get out of her to their friends. And as a young adult, now we know trafficking is, y'all know that prostitution is trafficking, right? Do I have to really tell you that? There's no woman, or man for that matter, because it happens to both male and female, young, old, everything in between. There's no person that would allow the things that happen in that situation, like voluntarily. There has to be a coercive element. There has to be, and usually it's money. Usually money is coercing them to make that decision, to do that trade. I'll give you the thing that I have that you want, and you give me the money I can feed my kids with, or I can pay my bills with, or whatever, to buy the drugs to deal with the damage. Like, this girl had damage, right, from all of those layers of abuse. But that's not the end of her story, because the Spirit of the living God has been poured out on this land, right? We have hope. She got saved. She gave her life to Jesus. She got a brand new life. She got to come and be a part of a kingdom and be a part of a family. And she got healing and she got restoration. And every sin that had ever been committed against me was answered that day. And I am not a victim, and I am not a survivor, but my life is thriving. That's my story. How could I not hold this microphone and tell you that this is happening in your neighborhoods? This is happening in the homes, on the streets you live on. This is happening to children you love and care about. And you're the answer. There are children crying out for freedom, and you're the answer. If a prophet from the Old Testament stood on this stage today and told you your children are being sold, what would you do? How would you react to it? Would you allow the Lord to use you? Would you allow him to use you? Would you be vulnerable? Would you give resources? Would you just pray? Like pray that this stops. How are your hearts? Are you getting there? Is it working? Is it working? So I started I didn't even know I had been trafficked, y'all. I started in this justice movement because I found out about trafficking and I was like, what? As a Christian, I cannot stand for this, people being bought and sold. I can't allow this in my community. I'm going to organize a film screening. I'm going to gather a group of people to pray about this. That was back in 2009, 2010. But as I started reading the stories about it, as the Lord started showing me through his word, the truth, I was like, I feel like I'm reading my own story. I was trafficked. I thought I was just making really bad choices. But no, it was a plot of the enemy to take me out, to destroy my life. Guess what? He's a loser. God is bigger than the boogeyman. He got control of my life, and now he's using me. So I wrote a book. The first book I wrote was Hello Navi. Thanks for singing that song this morning. He called my name, and I ran out of that grave. He called me, and I came to him. Oh, yeah. Navi is my name in Hebrew. And then I wrote Becoming Navi after that, and those are available today. They're novellas, so they tell you the story. They tell you a story. Raise your hand if you've read it. I know I've shared it with a few of y'all. It's a story, right? It doesn't hurt. It's not facts and figures. I gave y'all facts and figures this morning. That stuff it's yucky, kind of. There's a lot of hopelessness. But in these stories, there's a lot of hope because it's got character development. It's got a plot. You can follow it. You get connected with the character. You're rooting for the character. So now we're going to go on to strategy for solutions. And you can come get ready for your song if you want to while we start unpacking this. Here's your list, y'all. I've got a list of things you can do if you want to be part of the solution. Intercession. Where is Pastor Michelle? Is she in here? I think she's with the kids today. Yeah, intercession. We meet here every Monday. Come and just intercede. Or intercede from your home. You don't have to be a part of our group, but it's a good group, isn't it, Sherry? Sometimes we intercede for specifically about trafficking, but just interceding for the church, interceding for fatherless kids, interceding for the guys in the church to get stirring in their heart to go be the father for the fatherless kid. Teach them righteousness and the ways of the Lord. Pray for protection, prevention, and prosecution. We're praying for prosecution. Pray for the Attorney General's office. We're putting a lot of guys away in Texas, but we got a lot more to put away. Praise and worship. That's why I asked Robert to come, because it softens our hearts. It releases the Spirit of God into the atmosphere. We change the atmosphere. Worship is, I love watching you worship. You take me right there to the throne room. Entering into praise and worship softens our hearts. It gives us a place to meet with the Lord so he can tell us the next step. Resource equipping. Maybe you don't know how to pray. Maybe you don't know how to enter into worship. Maybe all you're really good at is writing checks. That's okay. No shame. We'll take your checks. That's a heavy anointing to carry. I can help you with that burden. We're organizing a team for outreach. Actually, I spent 2 days this week with Cindy Jacobs. Y'all know who she is? Find out who Cindy Jacobs is if you don't. If you need help learning how to pray, she's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome mama. And we were at her meeting, and then my friend, Danielle, who I also published a book for her, and I went out to do some strip club outreach. Now what that looks like is this praying, worshiping in the parking lots, but it's going to look like having the honor of taking gifts in and telling those girls that they're being trafficked, y'all. But we get to tell them, we're just here to support you. Just bring in love. Here to encourage you. Be a blessing. Maybe those girls don't want to be there. Maybe they feel like it's their only choice. Maybe they're single moms with kids. And they think that this is the only way they can provide for their kids. So equip these people that are gathering resources, fund outreaches, fund rehabilitation, fund education and prevention. Teach your kids, go on my website, get tools to teach your kids not to be trafficked, right? How about, I'm going to create a new resource. The Lord just spoke to me, just right here. I need to create a resource of how you teach your sons. How you teach your sons not to see a woman as a thing to buy. We need help in that area. Oh, I was crying so hard I missed a couple other scriptures. 2 Corinthians 5:17, I'm a new creation. And John 1:29, the Lamb of God that takes away the sins of the world. Not just the sins I committed, but every sin that was committed against me was wiped away that day. He gave me a new life. So today is the day. Robert's going to sing a song. Allow your heart to be stirred. Allow your heart to be stirred. Come pray. Come let the Lord do a work in your heart. This is a special time of an open altar. This is a special time. I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity to pray for you. For those 3 things. Maybe the heart was stirred because you're thinking, oh, I was hurt as a child. I never got that healing like she says is available. Maybe you have a physical need. There's an anointing here today, y'all. Maybe there's a physical healing here for you. Maybe it's a sin pattern that needs broken, that somebody keeps sinning against you, or an account of sins has been tallied in your mind. Or maybe it's you're stuck in a sin pattern. You want freedom from that. Maybe it's the activation. Maybe you're like, oh, I'm being called. Like, I feel that calling. I feel that hunger. Hunger is an escort, y'all. If you're feeling hungry to be like in this movement, that's the Lord. He's making you hungry. Guess what? You come to him with that hunger, and he's going to make you hungrier. He's going to make you hungrier. You're going to want more justice. You're going to want more freedom for more people. You're going to get hungrier. So maybe you need activated. Maybe you just need permission to be an abolitionist. We'll pray for that too. So if the prayer team comes, and he's going to sing a song, and then after we pray, we're going to give you an opportunity to get some prayer. And then Pastor Barry's going to dismiss us. So I'm sure you can sneak out if you got to go. But allow the Lord to call you to this altar. Allow him to minister.